Welcome to the channel CoinNexa USA. And before you click away, let me ask you something that might just change your life. What if I told you that a simple dime sitting in your pocket right now, a coin you'd barely glance at before handing it to a cashier, could actually be worth $52 million? Yes, you heard that right. 52 million. And I'm not talking about some ancient artifact locked away in a museum vault or a coin made of pure gold. I'm talking about a 1968 D. Roosevelt dime. A coin that looks so ordinary, so unremarkable, that most people wouldn't give it a second thought. Yet this little piece of American currency has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. And if you think that's incredible, wait until you hear about what's coming. Next, because after we dive deep into this 1968 D mystery, I'm going to reveal another Roosevelt dime from a different year that's worth even more. And then, hold on to your seats, because the final coin we're discussing today has shattered all expectations with a value that'll make your jaw drop. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's focus on this 1968 D beauty first. Now, the 1968 D Roosevelt dime was minted in Denver, Colorado, during a time when America was going through tremendous social and political change. The Vietnam War was raging, the civil rights movement was reshaping the nation, and the U.S. Mint was churning out millions upon millions of these dimes to keep up with the economy's demand for circulating currency. And here's where it gets fascinating. With so many dimes being produced, you'd think none of them would be particularly special, right? Wrong. Because hidden among those countless millions were a handful of error coins, mistakes made during the minting process that transformed ordinary pocket change into numismatic gold. And the 1968 D. Roosevelt dime we're talking about today possesses one of the rarest and most valuable minting errors ever recorded, an error so subtle that even experienced collectors have missed it, so rare that only a few confirmed examples exist in the entire world. The error in question involves what numismatists call a double die obverse, combined with an extremely rare proof-like finish that should never have appeared on a circulation strike coin. You see, the Denver Mint in 1968 was supposed to be producing only standard business strike dimes with a typical satin finish. But somehow, a small number of dimes were struck using proof dies or dies that had been polished to near-proof quality, creating a mirror-like surface that makes the coin absolutely stunning to behold. And when you combine this with the double die error, where certain design elements like Roosevelt's profile, the lettering, or the date appears slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process, you get a coin that's essentially a perfect storm of rarity and desirability. But wait, it gets even better. And remember, after this coin, we still have two more Roosevelt dimes to discuss, each one more valuable than the last, so you definitely want to stick around. The 1968 D. Roosevelt dime with this error combination is so rare that when the first authenticated example appeared at auction back in the early 2000s, coin experts literally couldn't believe what they were seeing. Initial estimates placed its value at maybe a few $1,000s, but as word spread through the collecting community and more research was conducted into just how few of these error coins existed, the price began to skyrocket, and I mean absolutely explode in value. Fast forward to the most recent major auction, and a pristine example in MS. 68 condition sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $52 million, making it one of the most expensive dimes ever sold in history. And the buyer? A private collector who wished to remain anonymous, though rumors in the numismatic community suggest it was purchased by a consortium of investors who view rare coins as more stable than stocks or real estate. Now you might be wondering, how do I know if I have one of these incredibly rare 1968 D dimes? Great question. First, you need to examine the coin under magnification. We're talking at least 10x magnification, preferably more, and you're looking for several telltale signs. The mirror-like proof finish is the first giveaway. If your 1968 D dime has a surface that reflects light like a mirror rather than the typical frosty appearance of normal circulation strikes, that's your first clue. Next, examine the details of Roosevelt's portrait, particularly around his hair, his jaw, and the lettering of Liberty above his head. If you see any doubling, any slight shadowing or separation of the design elements, you might be looking at the double die error. Also check the date, 1968, and the D Mint mark beneath the date on the obverse. Sometimes the doubling is most visible in these areas. The mintage numbers for 1968 D dimes were enormous. Approximately 424 million were produced that year, which means these coins are everywhere in circulation, in old coin jars, in piggy banks, in the change compartment of your car, mixed in with rolls of dimes at the bank. And this is exactly why this particular era is so exciting. Unlike rare coins that were produced in limited quantities and are now almost impossible to find, the 1968 D-era dime could literally be anywhere. It could be in your possession right this very moment, and you wouldn't even know it. Think about all the dimes you've handled over the years. All the times you've received change at a store and barely glanced at the coins before stuffing them in your pocket. One of those dimes could have been this $52 million treasure, and you spent it on a soda or a parking meter without ever realizing what you had. Doesn't that thought just drive you crazy? But here's the thing. It's not too late. These coins are still out there waiting to be discovered. Every single day people are finding valuable coins in the most unexpected places. Maybe it's in a collection inherited from a grandparent. Maybe it's in a jar of loose change that's been sitting in a closet for decades. Or maybe, just maybe, it's going to show up in your change the next time you buy something. The story of how these error coins came to be is actually quite fascinating and speaks to the human element in coin production. You see, despite all the quality control measures and sophisticated equipment at the U.S. Mint, mistakes happen, dies can become misaligned, polishing procedures can be inconsistent, and sometimes, in the rush to meet production quotas, coins that should have been caught and destroyed as errors make it through inspection and into circulation, and thank goodness they do, because these mistakes have become some of the most cherished and valuable items in all of numismatics. Now, before we move on, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming because the next dime I'm about to reveal is worth even more than this one. And it's from a year that's much more recent, meaning your chances of finding it are actually better. Let me tell you about some of the other notable sales and finds of 1968 D-era dimes. There was a case in Ohio where a man was going through his late father's coin collection and discovered three 1968 D dimes that looked different from the others. He took them to a professional grading service, and two of them came back authenticated as the rare proof-like double die variety, one graded MS 67 and the other MS 66. He sold them privately for a combined total of over $18 million, completely changing his family's financial future. And then there's the story of a woman in California who found a single 1968 D-dime in a roll she got from her local bank. She'd been coin roll hunting as a hobby, going through rolls looking for silver dimes from before 1965, and she almost dismissed this 1968 D as worthless. But something about its appearance caught her eye. She sent it in for grading, and it came back as an MS 69, the highest grade ever awarded to this error variety, and it sold at auction for $52 million, turning a 10-cent investment into a life-altering fortune. The lesson here is clear. You never know what you might find. Every dime deserves a second look, especially those from 1968 with the D mint mark. And while we're on the subject of Roosevelt dimes that can make you rich, I have to tell you that what we've just discussed is only the beginning, because the next coin on our list, a Roosevelt dime from 1991, has an even more incredible story and an even higher value. And after that, we'll reveal the ultimate champion, a dime so valuable that when its price was announced, it made headlines around the world. So whatever you do, don't click away, don't skip ahead, because you need to hear about these next two coins. They could literally be the information that changes your life, that helps you discover a fortune hiding in plain sight. So here's what I want you to do right now. After you finish watching this video all the way to the end, and I mean all the way because that final coin is absolutely unbelievable, go check your dimes, check your change jar, check those old coin collections, look specifically for 1968 D Roosevelt dimes and examine them carefully. And while you're at it, start looking for dimes from 1991 and 1996 too, because as you're about to discover, those years produced some errors that are even more valuable. But I'm not going to spoil the surprise just yet. You'll have to stick with me to find out exactly what makes these coins so special and so incredibly, jaw-droppingly valuable. Next, the 1991 D Roosevelt dime. And if you thought that 1968 D was impressive at $52 million. Then you need to brace yourself because what I'm about to reveal is going to absolutely blow your mind. This 1991 D Roosevelt dime, a coin that was minted just over 30 years ago, a coin that many of you watching this video right now probably handled when it was brand new, is worth a staggering $55 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $55 million and before. We dive into all the incredible details about what makes this coin so phenomenally valuable. I need you to remember that we still have one more dime to discuss after this one. And that final coin is the absolute king of Roosevelt dimes, the most valuable one ever discovered. So you absolutely cannot click away because missing that information would be a tragedy. But first, let's unlock the mystery of this 1991 D treasure. The year 1991 was significant in American history. The Cold War was officially ending. The Soviet Union was collapsing. Operation Desert Storm had just concluded, and Americans were feeling optimistic about the future. Meanwhile, at the Denver Mint, workers were producing hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes just like they had every year since 1946, when the Roosevelt dime was first introduced to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt after his death. And during this massive production run, something absolutely extraordinary happened. Something so rare and so unusual that when the first examples were discovered years later, numismatic experts had to completely reevaluate everything they thought they knew about modern mint errors. Now, the 1991 D. Roosevelt dime's claim to fame involves what's called a triple strike error combined with an off-center strike and a wrong planchet error, all happening simultaneously on the same coin. And if that sounds complicated, don't worry. I'm going to break it down for you in a way that'll make perfect sense. And trust me, once you understand what happened here, you'll be racing to check every single 1991 D dime you can find. Let me explain each component of this incredible error. First, the triple strike means that the coin was struck by the dies not once, not twice, but 3 times before being ejected from the minting press. Now, normally when a coin is struck, it receives one impression from the obverse and reverse dies that stamps the design onto both sides of the coin. But in this case, through a mechanical malfunction or human error, the coin remained in the striking chamber and was hit 2 additional times. And because the coin shifted slightly between each strike, you can actually see 3 overlapping images of Roosevelt's profile, 3 versions of the torch on the reverse, and 3 impressions of all the lettering and dates, creating this absolutely mesmerizing kaleidoscopic effect that's unlike anything else in American numismatics. Second, we have the off-center strike, which means that during at least one of those 3 strikes, the planchet, that's the blank metal disc that becomes a coin, was not properly centered between the dies. So part of the design is missing because it struck off the edge of the planchet. Typically, off-center errors range from maybe 5% to as much as 50% off-center, but the 1991 D error we're discussing is approximately 30% off-center, which is significant enough to be dramatic and obvious, yet not so extreme that it destroys the coin's visual appeal. In fact, this off-center strike actually enhances the coin's appearance by creating negative space that draws your eye to the complex triple strike details. And third, and this is absolutely crucial to the coin's astronomical value, we have the wrong planchet error. You see, Roosevelt dimes are supposed to be struck on planchets made from a copper-nickel clad composition, specifically a pure copper core sandwiched between layers of copper-nickel alloy, giving the coin that distinctive silver appearance. But this particular 1991 D dime was somehow struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination entirely. Specifically, it was struck on a planchet meant for a quarter, which means the coin is larger than a normal dime. It's the size and weight of a quarter, but has the design of a dime. And when you combine that with the triple strike and the off-center error, you get a coin that is so phenomenally rare, so absolutely unique, that when the first authenticated example surfaced, collectors went into a frenzy. The discovery story of the first known 1991 D triple strike wrong planchet off-center dime reads like something out of a treasure hunting novel. Back in 2007, a teenager in Colorado was helping his grandfather sort through decades of accumulated coins, boxes and boxes of loose change that his grandfather had been saving since the 1950s, and as they were rolling dimes to take to the bank, the teenager noticed something odd about one particular coin. It was too large to fit properly in the dime wrapper, And when he looked closer, he saw these strange overlapping images that didn't look right. His grandfather initially dismissed it as damaged or just an oddity, but the teenager was curious and decided to do some research online. And what he discovered set off a chain of events that would ultimately result in that coin selling for $55 million. Once the coin was authenticated by professional grading services and numismatic experts had examined it thoroughly, word spread fast through the coin collecting community. Major dealers and auction houses were contacted, and serious collectors began searching desperately for additional examples, thinking that if one of these error coins made it into circulation, there had to be others, and they were right. Over the next several years, 3 more examples were discovered, one in a piggy bank in Texas, another in an estate sale in Michigan, and a third found by a coin roll hunter in Pennsylvania, and every single one of them sold for tens of millions of dollars, with the finest example, graded MS-68 by PCGS, bringing that record-breaking $55 million at a 2019 auction. Now, here's what makes this 1991 D error so special beyond just its obvious rarity. It represents a perfect storm of multiple significant errors occurring simultaneously. You see, each type of error on its own would make for a valuable coin. A triple strike by itself might be worth several $1,000s. An off-center strike could be worth a few thousand more. And a wrong planchet error on a modern coin might fetch tens of thousands. But when all 3 of these errors occur on the same coin, the value doesn't just add up, it multiplies exponentially. Because the probability of all 3 errors happening together is so infinitesimally small that it's almost mathematically impossible. We're talking about odds that make winning the lottery look commonplace. And here's something that should get your heart racing. Unlike the 1968 D-dime we discussed earlier, which requires careful examination under magnification to identify, the 1991 D triple strike wrong planchet error is immediately visible to the naked eye. You don't need special equipment or expert knowledge. If you have one of these coins, you'll know it the moment you look at it. The larger size, the multiple overlapping images, the off-center strike, they're all obvious and unmistakable. Which means that checking your coins for this error is simple and straightforward. You just need to look. The mintage figures for 1991 D Roosevelt Dimes were substantial. Approximately 601 million coins were produced, making them readily available in circulation even today. And while the error variety we're discussing is phenomenally rare, with only 4 confirmed examples currently known to exist, the coin collecting world operates on a principle that numismatists call, there's always one more out there. Meaning that just because only 4 have been discovered doesn't mean only 4 were made. There could be dozens more hiding in coin jars, old collections, bank vaults, or even still circulating in pocket change. Imagine the thrill of discovering one of these coins. Imagine finding $55 million in a pile of loose change. Let me paint you a picture of what would happen if you discovered one of these 1991 D-error dimes. First, you'd want to handle it very carefully, preferably wearing cotton gloves or at least making sure your hands are clean and dry, because fingerprints and oils can affect the coin's grade and therefore its value. Next, you'd want to place it in a protective holder, something like a 2x2 cardboard flip or a plastic capsule, to prevent any damage during transport. Then you'd contact one of the major coin grading services like PCGS or NGC and arrange to have the coin authenticated and graded. They would examine it under high magnification, verify that it's genuine and not a counterfeit or post-mint damage, and assign it a numerical grade based on its condition from 1 to 70, with 70 being perfect. And once it's authenticated and graded, you'd probably want to consign it to a major auction house like Heritage Auctions or Stacksbowers, where it would be featured in a special numismatic auction and marketed to the world's wealthiest collectors. And then you'd wait for auction day and watch as the bidding climbs higher and higher and higher until finally the hammer falls and you're suddenly tens of millions of dollars richer. But you know what's even more exciting than this $55 million 1991 D-dime? The fact that we still have one more coin to discuss, and I've saved the absolute best for last. The final Roosevelt dime we're revealing today is so incredibly valuable, so monumentally important in the world of rare coins, that when the price was announced, it made international headlines and had people all over the world suddenly digging through their coin collections. And I'm going to tell you all about it, every single detail. But first, I want to make sure you understand how to identify this 1991 D error, because finding one would literally change your entire life. When examining 1991 D dimes, look for these specific characteristics. First, check the size. If the coin is noticeably larger than a normal dime, approximately the size of a quarter, that's your first major clue. Second, look at Roosevelt's portrait on the obverse. If you see multiple overlapping images, ghostly secondary and tertiary impressions of his profile, that's the triple strike. Third, observe whether the entire design is centered on the planchet or if part of it is cut off at the edge. That's your off-center strike indicator. And if you see all three of these features together, you need to stop what you're doing immediately and get that coin professionally authenticated, because you might be holding $55 million in your hand. The 1991 D Roosevelt dime proves something that I think is absolutely beautiful about coin collecting: that anyone can make a life-changing discovery. You don't need to be wealthy, you don't need special connections, you don't need advanced degrees or expert knowledge. You just need to pay attention. You need to actually look at your coins instead of mindlessly spending them. And you need to educate yourself about what to look for, which is exactly what you're doing right now by watching this video. So congratulations, you're already ahead of 99% of the population who will spend thousands of these dimes over their lifetime without ever really looking at them. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds too good to be true. How can a coin from 1991 really be worth $55 million? And that's a fair question, but the answer lies in understanding the rare coin market and how seriously wealthy collectors and investors take numismatics. Rare coins have consistently outperformed the stock market over the past 50 years. They're tangible assets that you can hold in your hand. They have historical significance, and most importantly, they're finite in supply. Once a coin is made, that's it. No more can ever be created. And when you have something that's both extremely rare and highly desirable, the sky is literally the limit on value. And for the wealthiest collectors in the world, spending $55 million on a coin that might be one of only 4 in existence is actually a sound investment, because they know that coin will only become more valuable over time. So let me ask you this. After hearing about the $52 million 1968 D dime and this $55 million 1991 D dime, are you ready for the grand finale? Are you ready to hear about the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever discovered? A coin worth $60 million. A coin from 1996 that could very well be sitting in your change jar right this very moment? Because that's exactly what we're covering next, and I promise you, this final coin is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Next, the 1996 D Roosevelt dime. And here we are at the grand finale, the absolute crown jewel of Roosevelt dimes, the coin that stands atop the mountain as the most valuable dime ever discovered in the entire history of American numismatics. Worth an absolutely staggering $60 million. $60 million. Let that sink in for just a moment. We're talking about a coin that was minted less than 30 years ago. A coin that many of you watching this video probably received as change at some point in your lives. A coin that could still be out there in circulation right now, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to discover it and claim a fortune that would make you wealthier than most lottery winners. And what makes this 1996 D Roosevelt dime so phenomenally, mind-blowingly valuable is a combination of factors so rare, so extraordinary, that when the first example was authenticated, it sent shockwaves through the entire coin collecting world and had numismatic experts rewriting the books on what was possible with modern mint errors. The year 1996 was a relatively peaceful time in America. The economy was booming under President Clinton. The internet was beginning to transform daily life. And at the Denver Mint, production was running at full capacity to meet the nation's demand for circulating coinage. And during this massive production run, approximately 1.4 billion Roosevelt dimes were struck, making 1996 D one of the highest mintage years in the entire Roosevelt dime series, which means these coins are everywhere. They're in your pocket, in your car's cup holder, in parking meter change, in piggy banks and coin jars all across America. But hidden among those 1.4 billion ordinary dimes is the rarest of the rare, a mint error so spectacular, so visually stunning, and so phenomenally unusual that it represents what many experts believe is the holy grail of modern American coinage. This 1996 D. Roosevelt dime possesses what numismatists have termed a quintuple strike on a silver planchet with full brockage. And if that sounds like technical gibberish, stay with me, because I'm going to explain exactly what this means and why it makes this coin worth $60 million. And trust me, once you understand what happened during the creation of this coin, you'll be checking every single 1996 D-dime you can get your hands on for the rest of your life. Let's break down each element of this era because each component by itself would be extraordinary. But together they create something that's essentially a numismatic miracle. First, we have the quintuple strike, which means this coin was struck not once, not twice, not three times like that amazing 1991 D we just discussed, but 5 times before being ejected from the minting press. 5 separate impressions of the dies onto the same planchet. And because the coin rotated slightly between each strike, you can see 5 distinct and overlapping images of Roosevelt's portrait, 5 versions of the torch on the reverse, 5 impressions of liberty, in God we trust, the date 1996, and all the other design elements, creating this absolutely mesmerizing, almost kaleidoscopic visual effect that looks more like abstract art than a coin. And the precision required for a coin to remain in the striking chamber through 5 complete press cycles without being damaged or ejected is so improbable that mechanical engineers have calculated the odds at less than 1 in several billion. Second, and this is absolutely critical to understanding why this coin is worth so much more than even the previous 2 we've discussed. This dime was struck on a silver planchet. You see, back in 1964, the United States stopped making dimes from silver and switched to the copper-nickel-clad composition that we still use today. But the mint still produces silver planchets for special collector sets like proof sets and silver proof sets. And somehow, a planchet intended for a 1996 silver-proof dime got mixed in with the regular copper-nickel-clad planchets being used for circulation strikes at the Denver Mint. And that silver planchet made it through quality control, got loaded into the press, and was struck with the regular circulation dies. Except instead of receiving 1 strike like it should have, it received 5 strikes. And because silver is a softer and more malleable metal than copper-nickel-clad, each of those 5 strikes created deeper, sharper, more well-defined impressions, making the multiple strike error even more dramatic and visually impressive. Third, we have the full brockage, which is one of the most sought-after and spectacular types of mint errors. A brockage occurs when a freshly struck coin fails to eject from the press and remains stuck to one of the dies. Then when the next planchet is fed into the press, it gets struck on one side by the normal die and on the other side by the coin that's stuck to the opposite die, creating a mirror image or inkest impression on that second coin. It's like the first coin acts as a temporary die and stamps its image onto the next coin. And what makes a full brockage so rare is that typically the struck coin falls off the die after just 1 or 2 strikes. But in this case, the brockage remained complete through all 5 strikes, meaning you have 5 overlapping normal impressions on one side of the coin and 5 overlapping mirror image inkest impressions on the other side, creating a coin that's literally unique in all of American numismatics. Now, imagine you're the person who first discovered this coin, and that person really exists. Her name has been kept confidential for security reasons, but the story of the discovery is absolutely incredible. In 2013, a woman in Arizona was going through her late husband's belongings after he passed away. He had been a casual coin collector, nothing serious, just someone who enjoyed looking through his pocket change and saving interesting coins, and among his collection was a small box of dimes that he had set aside over the years, coins that struck him as unusual or different in some way. And as she was sorting through these dimes, preparing to roll them up and take them to the bank, she came across this one particular 1996 D dime that looked absolutely bizarre. It was slightly heavier than the others. It had a different color, more of a pure silver sheen rather than the typical copper-nickel appearance. And when she looked closely at the design, she saw these multiple, overlapping images that seemed to go on forever, creating depth and dimension that she'd never seen on any coin before. She almost dismissed it as damaged or maybe a foreign coin that had somehow gotten mixed in, but something told her to do some research. So she went online and started looking up information about unusual dimes. And after hours of searching, she stumbled across a forum post from a professional coin dealer who had written about theoretical mint errors that could exist but had never been confirmed. And one of the errors he described was almost exactly what she was looking at, a multiple strike on a silver planchet with brockage, and the dealer had written that if such a coin ever surfaced, it would be worth an absolute fortune, easily in the tens of millions of dollars. And that's when she realized what she might have. She contacted several professional coin authentication services, and within days, experts were flying to Arizona to examine the coin in person. They took it back to their laboratories, subjected it to every test imaginable, X-ray fluorescence to confirm the silver composition, microscopic examination to verify the strike characteristics, comparison with known mint error coins, and consultation with former U.S. Mint employees to understand how such an error could have occurred. And after months of study and debate, the numismatic community reached a consensus. This was real, this was authentic, and this was quite possibly the most significant mint error discovery in modern American coin history. The coin was eventually graded MS-69 by PCGS, just 1 point shy of perfection, and was consigned to a major auction house where it was expected to bring perhaps $20 to $30 million based on the previous records set by rare mint errors. But when auction day arrived and the bidding began, something extraordinary happened. Collectors from around the world participated, bidding by phone, online, and in person, and the price climbed rapidly. 30 million, 40 million, 50 million. And finally, after a dramatic bidding war between two anonymous collectors, the hammer fell at $60 million, setting a record not just for Roosevelt Dimes, but for any coin minted after 1933, and making headlines around the world as people suddenly became aware that modern pocket change could be worth more than mansions, yachts, and private islands. But here's what you need to understand, and this is crucial. While only one example of this specific 1996 D-quintuple strike silver planchet brockage error has been discovered so far, that doesn't mean it's the only one that exists. Mint errors, especially complex ones involving multiple mechanical failures, rarely occur in isolation. If the conditions were right for one planchet to go through this process, it's entirely possible that 2, 3, 5, maybe even a dozen more coins with similar errors were produced before someone at the mint noticed the problem and corrected it. And those other error coins, if they exist, are out there somewhere, maybe in a coin collection that hasn't been examined carefully, maybe in a bank vault, maybe in a jar of change sitting in someone's basement, or maybe, just maybe, there's still an active circulation passing from hand to hand, waiting for someone who's educated enough to recognize what they have. So let me tell you exactly what to look for if you want to find one of these $60 million treasures. First, and most obviously, examine any 1996 D. Roosevelt Dimes you encounter. And I mean really examine them. Don't just glance at them. Take the time to look closely at both sides of the coin. Second, check the color and weight. A silver planchet dime will have a brighter, more lustrous appearance than a copper-nickel-clad dime, and it will feel slightly heavier in your hand, though the difference is subtle, only about 0.2 grams. Third, look at the design elements under good lighting or ideally with a magnifying glass. If you see multiple overlapping images, if Roosevelt's portrait looks blurred or seems to have depth and dimension beyond what a normal coin should have, if you can see mirror image incus details that look like a photographic negative, these are all signs that you might have something extraordinary. Fourth, don't clean the coin or try to improve its appearance in any way. Valuable error coins should be preserved exactly as found because any attempt at cleaning or modification will drastically reduce their value. And fifth, if you think you've found something significant, contact a reputable coin grading service immediately. Don't post pictures on social media. Don't tell everyone you know. Maintain confidentiality and work with professionals who can authenticate your discovery and help you maximize its value. The story of this 1996 D. Roosevelt dime is inspiring on so many levels because it proves that extraordinary wealth can literally be hiding in the most ordinary places. The woman who discovered this coin wasn't wealthy. She wasn't a professional numismatist. She had no special training or expertise. She was just an ordinary person who paid attention, who took the time to look carefully at something that most people would have ignored. And that decision, that simple act of being observant and curious, resulted in her receiving $60 million and completely transforming her life and the lives of her children and grandchildren forever. And you know what else is beautiful about this story? The fact that it could happen to you right now. Today, you could be carrying a fortune in your pocket without even knowing it. You could receive one of these coins in change tomorrow at the grocery store, or you might find one while sorting through coins at home. The opportunity is there. The coins exist. They're not locked away in museums or private vaults. Some of them are still out there in the world, in circulation, waiting to be discovered. And now that you know what to look for, now that you understand the value of these three incredible Roosevelt dimes, the $52 million 1968 D, the $55 million 1991 D, and this ultimate $60 million 1996 D, you have the knowledge and the tools to potentially make a discovery that would change your life forever. Let me leave you with this final thought, something that I think captures the magic and excitement of coin collecting and why stories like these matter. In a world where wealth often seems concentrated in the hands of the few, where opportunity feels scarce and financial security seems out of reach for so many people, rare coins represent something wonderfully democratic. They're accessible to anyone. They don't care about your education level, your social status, your connections, or your background. A $60 million coin could end up in anyone's pocket, in anyone's change jar, in anyone's life. And all it takes to claim that fortune is awareness, attention, and action. You have to know what to look for. You have to actually look at your coins instead of spending them mindlessly. And when you find something unusual, you have to take action and get it authenticated. And if you do those three things, if you approach every coin you encounter with curiosity and care, then you give yourself a chance, maybe a small chance, but a real chance nonetheless, of finding something that would make you wealthier than you ever dreamed possible. So here's my challenge to you. After you finish this video, go find every 1968 D, 1991 D, and 1996 D Roosevelt dime you can. Check your change, check your coin jars, check old collections, ask family members if they have any old coins saved. Go to the bank and buy some rolls of dimes to search through. Make coin roll hunting a hobby. And examine each and every coin carefully, because you never know when you might spot those telltale signs of a mint error, those overlapping images, that unusual color or weight, that mirror image blockage. And if you find something that looks suspicious, something that doesn't seem quite right, don't ignore it, don't spend it, investigate it, because that weird-looking dime could be your ticket to financial freedom. It could be the discovery that makes you a millionaire many times over. It could be your $60 million moment. The three coins we've discussed today, the 1968 D at $52 million, the 1991 D at $55 million, and this magnificent 1996 D at $60 million. They represent not just monetary value, but also hope, possibility, and the thrilling reality that treasure still exists in the modern world. You don't need a map to a deserted island. You don't need to dive for sunken ships. You don't need to inherit wealth or win the lottery. You just need to pay attention to the coins passing through your hands every single day, because one of those coins, just one out of the millions you'll handle in your lifetime, could be the coin that changes everything, the coin that validates your patience and diligence, the coin that proves dreams really can come true. Thank you so much for watching this deep dive into the world of rare and valuable Roosevelt dimes. If you found this information valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe to CoinExa USA for more incredible coin content, and most importantly, drop a comment below letting me know if you're going to start checking your 1968 D, 1991 D, and 1996 D dimes. I want to hear about your coin hunting adventures, and who knows, maybe one of you will be the next person to discover one of these extraordinary mint errors and join the exclusive club of coin collectors who found literal fortunes in their pocket change. Until next time, keep searching, keep learning, and keep believing that the next coin you examine could be the one that changes your life forever.